questions, or I tend to ask people to put for responses. So you can do it in chat. So we want to make sure that your questions are answered, or we can point you towards someone who can answer your questions. So my name is Ted Laderas. So we're going to be talking today about the Bioinformatics and Computational Biology program in DMICE. And you can see that I've got my Twitter handle and I've got my email. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so just a quick introduction. So as Bill said, I'm filling in for Shannon today, but who am I? So I'm an assistant professor within the Division of Bioinformatics and Computational Biomedicine. So one of my passions is definitely education. So I am certified instructor for RStudio. So I use RStudio and R to teach quite a few different kind of data science courses and workshops. And also I am a real big fan of data science and teaching data science skills. So I was a co-founder of the regional R conference that we called Cascadia R. And also within OHSU, we have a group that anyone can join, including people from outside of OHSU called Biodata Club, where we host workshops and kind of social kind of discussions about data and data science. Just in terms of my own research interests, I'm very big on education and active learning. I just feel like people learn better when they actually have to practice it. I spend a lot of time championing open science and reproducibility. With my own research work, I do a lot of work in interactive visualization. I have seen many different kinds of omics data, but I concentrate now on single cell data and systems approaches to understanding precision medicine. So let's kind of give a background for all of this. Has anyone here heard of the fourth paradigm? And just let me know in chat. Okay, we've got one person who says yes. So this is something that this is a concept that was kind of thought of by Jim Gray at Microsoft. And it's really kind of understanding kind of the world and data. I mean, the first paradigm is really kind of descriptive. So can we even describe kind of phenomena in the world? Second, like kind of based on these kinds of simple observations or kind of this theoretical level, which we're kind of thinking about having theories about how the world works. Third is really kind of the computational level. We're thinking about things, and we're kind of exploring like the information that we're giving. But as Bill kind of alluded to, we're really kind of in bioinformatics, we're really kind of going into what's called the fourth paradigm, which is really kind of exploring and understanding how the individual parts of a system, including patients work together. Any questions about that? Okay, so let's talk about data. So this is kind of a nice figure, and it's just talking about all of the different kinds of data that are attached to you as a patient or as a person. I mean, starting with the clinical data, and these percentages are basically how much of these different data types contribute to your own personal health. So we believe that clinical data, it determines about 10% of like your health status. Kind of moving from that, into kind of the molecular level, we've got genomics data. Genomics data really is kind of determines like 30% of your health. But really, what's interesting, and this is kind of where we're starting to move. And Bill alluded that we're not just our department, our major is not just about omics anymore. We're also looking at things such as this exogenous data. And so these are things. Has anyone heard of socio-economic determinants of health? Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, things like geography, zip code. I mean, they contribute quite a bit to our health. And on the right here, we have this. We just basically kind of have the size of the data kind of generated in a lifetime. So I mean, the clinical data is relatively small to these kinds of exogenous data that we collect. And this exogenous data also includes things like Fitbits, all of these kinds of sensors that we're kind of collecting about our individual health. So who here has heard of systems biology or systems medicine? Okay, so I mean, part of the idea behind systems biology and systems medicine is understanding. So you can see these are all different kinds of sources of data. How did they contribute to health? Can we basically understand, someone's health state? But not only that, and this has to do with kind of these molecular diagnostics, such as genomics and proteomics. Can we actually build a model for how the disease works within an individual? So a lot of this is kind of understanding really what the diagnostics are telling us and interpreting them. And the key is really that we think about this at the individual patient level. So every patient is unique in terms of their genetic contributions, and so we need to our understanding of the disease needs to end up at that level. Ideally we want to tailor therapies based on for somebody based on all of their data. Any questions about that? Okay. So let's kind of zoom in for a second. So let's talk about Autumn Boyton. So when she was 3, she was diagnosed with really kind of unfortunate kidney cancer, bilateral Wilms tumors. Um, so we need to ask these questions for Autumn. So how will she respond to like just what is the current standard of clinical care? So there are kind of standards of clinical care. So Autumn may receive chemotherapy kind of based on the severity. But really, for her, what is the best treatment plan? It might not just be the standard of care. And this is kind of an unfortunate fact of life. Is that if she relapses, how do we choose another therapy for her? So this is actually a very happy story. Autumn is this is a pretty old slide, and Autumn is very healthy and she's doing really well. But we want to be able to help people like Autumn. So as you saw, like the major is changed itself from computational biology to computational biomedicine. And really behind that is we need to kind of embed ourselves. A lot of our work is done with these kinds of functional assays and kind of these molecular characterizations of single patients. We need to integrate that into a patient care workflow. And part of that and this is really kind of where informatics comes in, is there is a lot of data, but we need to make it understandable and manageable for the people who are actually doing the clinicians in healthcare. Any questions about this? Okay, so as I've kind of alluded to, this idea of personalized medicine or precision medicine, we really need to think about um, think about how do we harness the vast amount of data, like including genomic data, and understanding everyone's disease and at a personal level. I mean, I think this is a great quote from this op-ed by Laurie Beckland. Like, the knowledge generated from those trials will die with us because there's no comprehensive database of metastatic breast cancer patients. And really, in the big data era, this void is criminal. So, I mean, part of it, like we hear about big data, but we really have to make it relevant to each individual patient. So again, Antonio Regalado really talks about this, the unfolding calamity in genomics is that a great deal of life-saving information, although already collected, is inaccessible. So, at a base level, each of us has about 6 terabytes of genetic information, but are we able to kind of make sense of that in the context of larger patient populations? So can we understand, for example, if I were unfortunate to have, um, some sort of cancer, um, could we understand, what my genetic state is compared to other patients who have that similar cancer? And can we kind of help determine courses of treatment based on this? So that's kind of a long discussion of kind of like where we're getting there. So I want to just talk a little bit about the program. So this is what I was talking about before, the idea of basically human data interaction. So let's talk more about the program. So these are all areas of study that we have within our division. We do my own work. I do a lot of work in analytics and data science. Many of our faculty do utilize machine learning approaches and systems biology. This idea of understanding kind of what is the patient state of a system based on kind of molecular characterizations and assays, and understanding, where that system may progress. These are all kind of areas of study. So, yeah, and if there's any questions about these kinds of areas of study, please let me know in chat. But we are moving towards areas such as computational neuroscience, and like I said, computational biomedicine is very much work that we are all working on. So just to give you context, if you're entering our program, whether you are a PhD or a master's student, so this is kind of what your first year would look like if you decided to be a BCB student. So really, if for PhD students, you would do basically to kind of prepare yourself, you would do my free online R boot camp, or I have an alternative course called Ready for R, which is also free. And you'd also do research rotations. But the bulk of your first year would really be spending doing coursework. So it's going to be in basically kind of statistics, understanding algorithms. How do we search for like genetic sequences, for example, or how do we kind of group patients on molecular characteristics using things like clustering algorithms, and building predictive models. That kind of all leads. There's also, we do focus on computational skills. We have a scripting course. we have and that does a lot of work in Python. We have our large scale databases course in which we talk about these like kind of being able to build and query large databases. We're also kind of moving that um, into like distributed computing. So we do some work with distributed computing, so you can kind of work with that and cloud computing. And then, so there is this kind of culminates in spring with like the research methods course, in which you're doing kind of a short achievable project your spring quarter, and then um, depending on your if you're a master's student with thesis or without thesis. If you are with thesis, you may spend your time planning for your thesis, but the non-thesis options, you're going to be planning to do internships. So the thesis is about a year-long process of producing kind of research on independent research with a mentor. The summer internship is much more focused on kind of practical matters, and we try. The students basically sign up for internships with various kinds of bioinformatics groups. We've got I can't remember. So there is, I think it's ODP, Omics, or there is a group in town called Omics. I believe it's Omics Data Automation, and a lot of our students have done internships with them. But the real point of that is that you come out with kind of solid skills, and that you're kind of positioned yourself for a career. If you want more information about the courses, there is a link, and this will be sent out to you so you can kind of take a look at it. Any questions about coursework, about what it covers and what it doesn't cover?
How much is this first year coursework adapted for people who already have degrees in, say, formal mathematics or computer science and have done a lot of research in those areas?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends based on like what your past background is. So we may waive, and this also depends on what kind, whether you're kind of PhD or master's. We may waive that requirement, but we may ask, and hope, I'm not exactly sure what the procedure right now is. You may not have to take that course, but you may have to do some sort of course, related computational course, and something that you want to do. So we do take that into consideration. But also, this is kind of a tricky process as well, because we have to understand your past coursework. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about coursework? So let's just talk about where our students have ended up. I mean, there are kind of you can end up kind of doing in lots of different kind of areas, including industry, academia, doing work for the government. We have a number of students who done work for the VA, for example. There are also kind of private firms. There are many kind of opportunities kind of attached to it. So just in terms, we just want to give you an idea of kind of where our students end up. So there is a question about BCB and the biomedical engineering graduate program. So what I will say is that we tend to be a little more prescribed than the BME graduate program. They take a lot of our courses, actually. So the students, I would say that kind of it is very much an engineering focus, but we have had multiple students who have come in through that program. So, I mean, it's worth looking at that program to understand whether this one or that one is kind of right for you. In terms of PhDs, obviously going on to postdoc fellowships, faculty positions are possible, but just to be realistic, 75% of postdocs do not end up in academia. So, there are a lot of other kind of areas that you can kind of move into, like within industry. If you want to work for like a pharmaceutical company, you can do senior analyst or kind of staff scientist positions. So these salaries are a little inflated. So these are I just want to say that these are the salaries that come from California, specifically the Bay Area. So they're kind of inflated. But these are kind of some of the positions that like our students kind of end up in. They might not have ended up in these systems, but these are just kind of current listings. So like, for example, working for some place like Genentech, this is kind of their base salary. But I mean, it also depends on, what your background is, because this degree is useful, but kind of if you like, for example, if you're a clinician and you kind of wanted to go out, you become your like the kind of work that's kind of possible for you is going to be different. So like there's going to be some time kind of at the end of the session, not this session, but after after this to talk about salaries and positions with Virginia Lankeys. So if you have a chance, please ask questions for her. So just want to end with some career advice. So one of the great things about bioinformatics is that I'm always learning something new. I've had to adopt the attitude of being a lifelong learner. But to do that, you have to have a group that you are willing to work with. None of us learns well alone. Some of us can do that, but the majority of us, you need to be able to find a group that you can kind of discuss all of these issues with and help each other. The coursework here is valuable. We really try to focus on kind of directly marketable skills. I will say, the one thing that kind of differentiates us from biomedical engineering is that we really focus on knowledge and making data kind of useful and interpreting data to the point in which, a healthcare professional can understand it. So be inquisitive, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of learning things new. So Nate Silver has this great kind of metaphor of, well, I don't know if it originated with him, but he talks about foxes versus hedgehogs. And hedgehogs just kind of learn one thing and their world is kind of constrained to that, whereas foxes have a very kind of diverse knowledge base and they can kind of come in and work on different problems. So, definitely look out for research and volunteer opportunities. So these are good ways to kind of test drive whether this career is for you. And finally, really, your path is really your own, and you have to kind of discover what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what you can do for the long term. So just want to end this with, so we're just about out of time. These are talking about, there are some we do some DMI seminars. Some of you may have kind of experienced our seminar. And these are the information for our major and kind of how you can kind of find out more information. This is kind of my last slide. So I'm just I am very passionate about offering data science for free, learning for free. So these are kind of two resources that I provide for free. So the R Bootcamp, this is kind of an interactive course. This is completely free. You just go to the website. You can also sign up for my Ready for R course, which is more of a kind of prescribed course, but we do lots of learning in RStudio notebooks. And so you can apply for you can register for free at this mailing address. I wish I had made more time for questions, but I think we are at time.
We are at time. The link to going back to the other session is up there. And just remember that there is still the student panel at 2:15, so you'll be able to ask other BCB students about their experiences. So thank you, Ted, very much. This was very helpful.
Okay. Have a good.
Hey, everybody.
Bye.